My school sent me to a hospitality job that turned out to be a trafficking ring, so I escaped and disappeared forever. Years later, my friend who I thought died saving me tracked me down to say they were still operating. I was 14 when Ms. Thompson from the Career Center told me about a summer hospitality job. It paid $900 a week in cash, and all you had to do was move across the country by yourself and sleep in a warehouse with 40 other girls, all sleeping on mattresses on the floor. Well, it was a no-brainer, because at the time my mom had cancer and we needed money bad. The first red flag came at the airport when I met a lot of the girls for the first time, because we all had one thing in common: trauma. Stephanie was recently orphaned and needed the money for her little brother. Lily was a child of a single father who also had cancer. One way or another, we all had some sort of unexpected situation that left us desperate for money. Go figure. The plane ride to Texas was only 4 hours, but the drive afterwards was 3. I stared out the window as we drove further and further away from civilization, and the first thing they did when we got there was take our phones and passports. I felt fear settle into my stomach, but then I thought of my mom lying on a bed with stage 3 leukemia, crying while eating nothing but a few tablespoons of soup every day. So I shook it off and just focused on what the lady was saying. She said we owed them for transport and housing, but we'd work it off. I still wasn't sure what we'd be doing. I expected to be some sort of caller or maybe a cleaner. Boy, was I wrong. At 8 p.m., Mr. Lee told us to look pretty. The older girls did the makeup for the younger ones. It was my first time wearing first-hand clothing. Butterflies filled my stomach. I had always wanted to be a model, and now it was really happening, or so I thought. At 9:45 p.m., we were all separated into groups based on age, race, and body type. And by the time the men came in at 10 p.m. sharp, we were all lined up against the wall, wearing nothing but undergarments, heels, and a heavy face of makeup. They were all around 30 or 40, wearing expensive suits. Greediness flooded their eyes. Then it happened. One of them pointed at me. I froze, and he picked me up with a smirk on his face. He then proceeded to steal my innocence, over and over. I cried myself to sleep that night. Everything in me was hurting. I thought of my mom again, and just hoped that my job would be enough for her to get better. The next morning, they told me I earned $50 but owed $200 for the clothes and makeup. That's when I understood we'd never make enough to leave. I was picked by them every single night. My life became gray and meaningless. After 2 weeks, they offered us bags of snow to lift our spirits. But really, I knew they were just trying to make us substance dependent. Less resistance that way. I never said yes, and I never talked to any of the girls. I thought if I got attached, then it would make things worse. But after 2 months of living as a mute, I finally met Mika. Small brown eyes, always wore her hair in a bun, very pale skin. She was 16 and had been there 2 years already. She told me I reminded her of her little sister and promised to protect me. Soon, Mika became my lifeline. She taught me to hide money in my shoe lining and which guards to avoid. She showed me the weak spot in the fence behind the dumpsters where the metal was rusted through. We started planning. Mika had been counting guard rotations for months. Every third Tuesday, the overnight guard drank himself unconscious by 3 a.m. We saved stolen bills for bus tickets. Mika said she'd rather die trying to escape than live another year there. And after 6 months, everything changed. I was fast asleep on the cold floor when I heard gunfire. Mika grabbed my hand and said this was our only chance. We ran through the main room where bodies were already dropping, made it to the fence. She boosted me up first, and just as I was tasting freedom, I heard a gasp. I turned around to see Mika's stomach pouring with red. I tried to climb back down, but she screamed at me to go. Another bullet hit the fence by my head. I left her lying in the dirt. I hid until dawn, then walked to a police station. The officer made a call while I talked, but then I saw it. A barcode on his right upper arm. That's when I knew he was one of them. I bolted from the station, my legs shaking as I pushed through the glass doors. The morning sun hit my face, but I barely felt it. My bare feet slapped against the hot pavement as I ran down the street, ignoring the stares from early morning commuters. A woman walking her dog stepped back when she saw me coming, pulling her pet closer. I turned into an alley and pressed myself against a brick wall, trying to catch my breath. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might burst through my chest. The officer would realize I was gone any second. They'd come looking. I needed to move, needed to get far away from here. A truck rumbled past the alley entrance, and I saw the sign for a truck stop 3 blocks down. I forced myself to walk normally, keeping my head down. My feet were bleeding by the time I reached the parking lot full of 18-wheelers. Drivers were checking their loads, filling up with diesel, grabbing coffee from the convenience store. I approached a woman climbing down from a red Peterbilt. She had gray hair pulled back in a ponytail and worn jeans. Her face looked tired but kind. "Please," I said, my voice cracking. "I need a ride. Anywhere north. I can't pay, but I'll do whatever work you need." She looked me up and down, taking in my torn clothes and bloody feet. "How old are you, honey?" 18, I lied. She studied my face for a long moment. "Get in. I'm heading to Missouri." I climbed into the cab, sinking into the passenger seat. She handed me a bottle of water and a pack of crackers from her cooler. I tried to eat slowly, but my hands shook too much. "Bad situation?" she asked, pulling onto the highway. I nodded, unable to speak. "I won't ask questions, but there's a bus station in Kansas City. You got somewhere to go from there?" "My aunt," I whispered. "She lives in Minnesota." We drove in silence for hours. She stopped once to buy me a pair of flip-flops from a gas station. When we reached the bus station, she pressed $20 into my hand. "Whatever you're running from, don't look back," she said. I used the gas station bathroom to clean myself up as best I could. My reflection looked like a stranger. Hollow eyes, tangled hair, bruises fading to yellow on my arms. I splashed cold water on my face and tried to make myself look normal. The collect call to Aunt Sarah took 3 tries before she accepted. I hadn't talked to her in 2 years. "It's me," I said when she answered. "I need help." "What happened? Where are you?" "Kansas City. The job didn't work out. Can you wire money for a bus ticket?" She sighed heavily. "Your mother is very sick. This isn't a good time." My throat closed up. "I know. Please Please, Aunt Sarah, I have nowhere else to go. Another long pause. Fine, but you better explain everything when you get here. The bus ride took 14 hours. I stared out the window, watching farmland blur past, trying not to think about Mika bleeding in the dirt, trying not to think about anything at all. Sarah met me at the Minneapolis station. She looked older, grayer, worry lines etched deep around her mouth. She hugged me stiffly. You look terrible, she said. We drove to her apartment in silence. It wasn't until we pulled into the parking lot that she spoke again. Your mother passed away 3 days ago. The words hit me like a physical blow. I doubled over in the seat, gasping for air. Everything I'd endured, everything I'd survived, and I was too late. She died thinking I'd abandoned her. Sarah's apartment was small, just one bedroom. She set up an air mattress in the living room for me. I lay there that first night, staring at the ceiling, feeling completely empty. No tears came, just a hollow ache that settled into my bones. You need to tell me what happened, Sarah said the next morning over instant coffee. The job was a scam. They took our money. I had to leave. She frowned. Why didn't you call sooner? They took our phones. You should have gone to the police. I almost laughed at that. I tried. It didn't help. She wanted more details, but I couldn't give them. How could I explain? How could I tell her the truth? So I stuck to vague answers until she finally gave up. You'll need to enroll in school, she said, and find a part-time job to help with expenses. I'm barely making rent as it is. I nodded, grateful she was letting me stay at all. The school enrollment was easier than expected. I used my middle name, Catherine, instead of my first. Told them my records were delayed due to a family emergency. They placed me in sophomore year based on my age. Though I'd missed so much, I might as well have been starting fresh. The first few weeks were a blur. I sat in classes, understanding nothing. The other students seemed like aliens, worried about homework and crushes while I was still checking exits and flinching when male teachers got too close. I ate lunch alone in the bathroom stall. The pain started 3 weeks after I arrived, burning when I used the bathroom, constant pressure in my lower abdomen. I ignored it until I couldn't anymore. You need to see a doctor, Sarah said when she found me curled up on the bathroom floor. I'm fine. No, you're not. There's a free clinic downtown. I'll take you Saturday. The clinic waiting room was packed. Crying babies, coughing elderly people, teenagers looking as miserable as I felt. When they finally called my name, a tired-looking nurse took my vitals. What brings you in today? Stomach pain, and it burns when I pee. She asked more questions, had me pee in a cup. The doctor, a young woman with kind eyes, did an exam that made me shake uncontrollably. You have a severe UTI, she said gently. Have you been sexually active? I stared at the floor. Yes. We'll run some additional tests. When was your last period? I tried to think. Time had blurred together so much. I don't know, maybe 2 months ago? The pregnancy test came back positive. The doctor explained options in a calm voice while I sat frozen, unable to process the words. She prescribed antibiotics for the infection and told me to come back in a week. I never made it to that appointment. 5 days later, I woke up to cramping so severe I could barely breathe. Blood soaked through my pajama pants. I stumbled to the school bathroom during first period and collapsed in a stall. The nurse found me there an hour later, called an ambulance. At the hospital, they confirmed what I already knew. 11 weeks along, they said. Nothing they could do. Did you know you were pregnant? The emergency room doctor asked. No, I lied. It seemed easier than explaining. Sarah picked me up that afternoon, her face tight with anger and worry. Why didn't you tell me? Tell you what, don't play dumb. The hospital told me everything. We drove home in silence. She didn't ask who the father was. I think she was afraid of the answer. I went back to school the next week, but focusing was impossible. Words swam on the page. Teachers' voices sounded like they were underwater. I'd sit in class and suddenly be back in that warehouse, men's hands on my skin. I'd snap back to find everyone staring at me. My grades reflected my mental state. Failed tests piled up. Teachers sent concerned notes home. Sarah grew increasingly frustrated. You're not even trying, she said after another failed math exam. I can't support you if you won't help yourself. I am trying. No, you're not. You sit in your room all day. You barely eat. You won't talk to me. What am I supposed to do with you? The fights escalated. She'd yell about responsibility and second chances. I'd retreat further into myself. One night, after a particularly bad argument about my report card, she said the words I'd been dreading. Maybe you'd be better off in foster care. I can't do this anymore. The threat hung between us for days. I knew she meant it. Sarah was drowning too, working double shifts at the nursing home, barely keeping utilities on. I was just another burden. That's when I saw the help wanted sign at the Chinese restaurant 6 blocks away. The owner, Mr. Chen, barely spoke English, but he understood desperation. He hired me on the spot. Cash under the table, no questions asked. The work was brutal. 8 hours standing over industrial sinks, scalding water turning my hands raw. The kitchen stayed at 90 degrees even in winter, but every night I walked home with $40 in my pocket. I hid it in a shoebox under the air mattress, my escape fund growing slowly. School became an afterthought. I showed up enough to avoid truancy officers, but spent most classes with my head on the desk. The counselor called me in repeatedly. Catherine, your teachers are concerned. Is everything okay at home? Everything's fine. Your grades suggest otherwise. You were enrolled as a capable student, but you're failing almost everything. I shrugged. What was the point of algebra when I could barely get through each day? Sarah's boyfriend, Benjamin, moved in after 6 months. He was tall, heavy-set, worked construction. At first he ignored me, which was fine, but after a few weeks I noticed him watching me. His eyes lingered too long when I walked to the bathroom in my pajamas. You're filling out, he said one night when Sarah was at work. Looking more like a woman, I stopped leaving my room when he was home, started sleeping with a kitchen knife under my pillow. The lock on my door was flimsy, just a push button that could be popped with a credit card. He tested it one night, hammered after a poker game. The doorknob rattled at 2 a.m. I sat up, gripping the knife handle. Catherine, you awake? His words slurred together. I stayed silent, barely breathing. The knob rattled harder. Come on, just want to talk. Sarah's home, I lied. lied loudly. He mumbled something and stumbled away, but I knew it was only a matter of time. I left the next morning with my shoebox of cash and a backpack of clothes. Didn't leave a note. Sarah would be relieved anyway. My coworker at the restaurant, Catherine, let me crash on her couch. She lived with her boyfriend in a studio apartment that smelled like cat pee and cigarettes, but it was safe, and that's all that mattered. You can stay 2 weeks, she said. Then you need to find your own place. I picked up extra shifts, working doubles whenever possible. My hands cracked and bled from the constant water. My back ached constantly, but within 3 weeks, I had enough for a deposit on a room in a house with 5 other people. The room was tiny, just big enough for a twin mattress and a dresser. The bathroom was shared, always dirty. My housemates were a rotating cast of people scraping by. A single mom working 3 jobs, college dropouts, an old man who collected cans. When anyone asked about my past, I kept it simple. Parents died in a car accident. Been on my own since. People didn't push. Everyone there had their own sad story. I dropped out of school officially on my 16th birthday. Forged Sarah's signature on the withdrawal papers. The secretary barely glanced at them. You sure about this, honey? I need to work full-time. Family stuff. She stamped the papers with a sympathetic look. Full-time at the restaurant meant 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week. My world shrank to the kitchen, my room, and the liquor store on the corner. Weekends blurred into cheap vodka and blackouts. It was the only way to quiet the memories. Sometimes walking home late at night, I'd see a man who looked like Lee or one of the others. My heart would race, palms sweating, until I realized it was just my mind playing tricks. Every police car made me duck into alleys. Every knock on the door sent me into panic. The other dishwashers came and went, but I stayed. Mr. Chen promoted me to prep cook after a year. The pay was better, but the work was harder. Burns covered my arms from hot oil splatter. My fingers were permanently stained from chopping vegetables. I never made friends. Coworkers invited me out sometimes, but I always declined. Getting close to people meant questions, meant vulnerability. It was safer to stay isolated. Dating was out of the question. When men showed interest, I felt nothing but revulsion. A busboy named Benji asked me out repeatedly until I threatened him with a kitchen knife. He told everyone I was crazy. Maybe he was right. By 18, I had my own studio apartment. It was a dump. Roaches, broken heating, water stains on the ceiling, but it had a deadbolt and a chain lock. I installed 3 more locks myself, checked them obsessively before bed. The nightmares never stopped. I'd wake up gasping, sheets soaked with sweat, phantom hands still on my skin. Some nights I didn't sleep at all, just sat by the window drinking until sunrise. I thought about Mika constantly, wondered if she survived, if she escaped. Part of me wanted to search for her, but I was too afraid. What if looking for her led them back to me? The years passed in a haze of work and alcohol. 19, 20, 21, same routine, same emptiness. I saved money obsessively but had no plans for it. The future was a concept I couldn't grasp. There was only surviving each day. My 22nd birthday came and went without fanfare. I worked a double shift, came home to my empty apartment, drank half a bottle of whiskey, stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Hollow cheeks, dead eyes, scars inside and out. This was my life now. Not living, just existing. The girl who wanted to be a model, who had dreams and hope, she died in that warehouse. What remained was just a shell, going through the motions. Sometimes I wondered if I should have stayed with Mika, should have died trying to save her instead of running. At least then it would be over. This half-life, this constant fear and emptiness. It felt like a different kind of prison. But every morning I got up, went to work, came home, repeated the cycle. Because despite everything, some small part of me kept fighting. Some tiny spark refused to be extinguished completely. I was washing dishes on a slow Tuesday night when everything changed. A new server started that week. A woman about my age with short black hair and a slight limp. She introduced herself as Catherine, but something about her voice made me freeze. She turned toward me, and our eyes met across the steamy kitchen. The plate I was washing slipped from my hands, shattering on the floor. Those brown eyes, that pale skin. My heart stopped. Mika? The word came out as a whisper. Her face went white. She glanced around the kitchen, checking who was watching, then rushed over to help me clean up the broken pieces. Not here, she whispered, so quiet I almost missed it. After shift, meet me at the dumpsters. The next 4 hours dragged by. My hands moved automatically through the motions of washing and drying, but my mind raced. Mika was alive. She'd found me. How? Why now? What did she want? When Mr. Chen finally let us go at midnight, I slipped out the back door. Mika was already there, smoking a cigarette with shaking hands. In the dim light from the kitchen window, I could see the changes. Her face was harder, thinner. A scar ran from her left ear to her collarbone. I thought you were dead, I said. Almost was. She lifted her shirt slightly, showing a puckered scar on her stomach. Took 3 surgeries, spent months in the hospital. How did you find me? She took a long drag. Been looking for 2 years, checking restaurants, hotels, anywhere they might hire people without asking questions. When I saw the name Catherine on the schedule here, I had to check. We stood in silence. Part of me wanted to hug her, but something felt wrong. The way she kept checking over her shoulder, the tension in her shoulders. We need to talk, she said finally. But not here. You still live nearby? I hesitated. My apartment was my safe space. No one from work had ever been there. But this was Mika. She'd saved my life. 5 blocks north, I said. We walked in silence, staying in shadows. Every car that passed made us both tense. At my building, I unlocked the 3 deadbolts and let her in. She whistled low at the locks. Paranoid much? Can you blame me? She shook her head. No, I've got 4 on mine. I made instant coffee while she sat on my threadbare couch. In the harsh overhead light, I could see more scars, burn marks on her arms, a crooked finger that had healed wrong. What happened after I left? I asked, handing her a mug. Chaos. Turns out it was a rival operation trying to take over territory. Most of the guards died. The girls scattered. I played dead until the shooting stopped, then crawled to the road. Some trucker found me, called 911. Did you tell the police? She laughed bitterly. bitterly. Tried to. They said I was confused from blood loss. No evidence of a warehouse full of girls. By the time I got out of the hospital and could show them where, the place was cleaned out. Empty building. No trace we were ever there. My stomach churned. All those girls. Where did they end up? But that's not why I'm here, Mika continued. She set down her mug, leaned forward. I've been tracking them. The operation. They're still running. Just moved locations. No. I stood up, backed away. No, I can't. I'm done with that. I have a life here. Do you? She gestured around my empty apartment. This is living? Hiding in a box? Washing dishes? Drinking yourself to sleep? It's safe. It's not living. And it won't last. They're still looking for us, you know. The ones who got away. We know their faces, their names. We're loose ends. My hands started shaking. They don't know where I am. You sure about that? You don't think they have people checking hospitals, shelters, restaurants? How long before someone recognizes you? I wanted to argue, but the fear was already creeping in. Every strange face at work. Every car that drove by too slowly. Had I been fooling myself thinking I was hidden? What do you want from me? I asked. There's a group of us. Girls who escaped, some family members of ones who didn't. We're building a case. Real evidence. But we need more witnesses. More testimony. I can't testify. You know what they'll do. Not in court. We're going through journalists. People who can protect sources. Tell the story without naming names. But we need multiple accounts to make it credible. I shook my head. I just want to forget. You think you can forget? Her voice rose. You think those nightmares will stop? That you'll suddenly be able to let someone touch you without flinching? It doesn't work that way. I tried. We all tried. She pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. This is the journalist's contact. She's good. Trustworthy. Already has 3 other girls' stories. With yours, with mine, we might actually have enough to make people listen. I stared at the paper but didn't take it. I need to think. Don't think too long. She stood, headed for the door. I'm staying at the Riverside Motel, room 12, but only for a few more days. Then I'm gone, with or without you. After she left, I triple-checked all the locks, then sat on the floor with my back against the door. My carefully constructed walls were crumbling. The past I'd tried so hard to bury was clawing its way back up. I called in sick the next day, spent hours pacing my apartment, trying to decide. The smart thing was to run, pack up, leave town, start over somewhere else. But I was tired of running, tired of looking over my shoulder, tired of being afraid. That night, I knocked on room 12 at the Riverside Motel. Mika opened the door immediately, like she'd been waiting. I knew you'd come, she said. The room was sparse but clean. A laptop sat open on the bed, documents scattered around it, photos, printed emails, maps. She'd been busy. This is everything I've gathered, she said. Locations they've used, girls I've tracked down, financial records from a source inside their operation. You have someone inside? Had. She disappeared 2 months ago, but not before getting me this. She held up a flash drive, bank transfers, shell companies, names of clients. My blood ran cold. You have their client list? Some of it, enough to prove this isn't just a few bad guys. It's a network. Businessmen, politicians, even some cops. That explained why the police hadn't helped, why the warehouse was cleaned out so fast. This was bigger than I'd imagined. The journalist, Rebecca Chen, she's been investigating trafficking for years. She knows how to protect sources, how to build a story that can't be ignored or buried. And if they find out we're talking, Mika's face hardened. Then we better make sure the story comes out first. We spent the next 3 hours going through everything. I told her details I'd never spoken aloud. Names, dates, faces I'd tried to forget. She typed notes, asked careful questions, never pushed when I needed breaks. There's something else, she said when we finished. I found some of the other girls, the ones who got out during the raid. They're not doing well. What do you mean? She pulled up photos on her laptop. Girls I recognized, but barely. Stephanie was on the streets, hollow-eyed and skeletal. Lily had overdosed 6 months after escaping. Others were in jail, psychiatric hospitals, or simply missing. We're the lucky ones, Mika said quietly. We're surviving. They deserve justice too. That decided it. I gave her everything, every detail, every name, every memory I'd buried. If telling my story could help stop this from happening to other girls, maybe the nightmares would finally mean something. We met with Rebecca Chen 2 days later in a coffee shop downtown. She was younger than I expected, maybe 30, with intelligent eyes and a gentle manner. She listened without interrupting, taking careful notes. I need you to understand the risks, she said when we finished. Once this story publishes, there's no taking it back. They'll know you talked. We know, Mika said. I can protect your identities in the article, but if they have sources in law enforcement, they might still figure it out. Are you prepared for that? I thought about my empty apartment, my isolated life, the years of running and hiding. I'm already living in fear. At least this way, it's for something. Rebecca nodded. I'll need a few weeks to verify everything, cross-reference with my other sources. In the meantime, be careful. Change your routines, stay aware of your surroundings. What about protection? Mika asked. I have contacts who might help, former cops who specialize in keeping witnesses safe, but it's expensive. We'll figure it out, I said, thinking of my savings. What was I keeping it for anyway? The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of paranoia. Every shift at the restaurant, I watched for new faces, walked different routes home, slept with a baseball bat next to my bed. Mika stayed in town, moving hotels every few days. We met secretly to go over more details, fill in gaps in the timeline. Then things started happening. My apartment door showed scratches around the lock, like someone had tried to pick it. A car with tinted windows parked outside the restaurant 3 nights in a row. Mr. Chen mentioned someone had called asking about employees, claiming to be from immigration. We need to move faster, I told Rebecca during a hurried phone call. I'm pushing as hard as I can, just a few more days. But we didn't have days. That night, walking home from work, I noticed footsteps matching mine, speeding up when I did, slowing when I slowed. My heart hammered as I turned the corner, broke into a run. The footsteps ran too. I ducked into a 24-hour laundromat, hid behind the machines. Through the window, I saw a man in a dark coat walk past, looking frustrated. I didn't recognize his face, but I recognized recognized the way he moved, the predatory scan of his eyes. He was hunting. I called Mika from the laundromat bathroom. They found us. Where are you? I told her. 20 minutes later, she pulled up in a hit-up Honda. I dove into the passenger seat and we sped off. In the rearview mirror, I saw the man in the coat emerge from an alley, talking rapidly into a phone. Rebecca's place, Mika said. She has security. Rebecca lived in a converted loft with reinforced doors and security cameras. She let us in without questions, saw the fear on our faces. How long until the story runs? Mika demanded. My editor wants more verification. Another week at least. We don't have a week, I said. They're here. They know. Rebecca paced, thinking. There's another option. We go live with what we have. Post it online. Let it spread before they can stop it. It won't have the impact of a full investigation, but do it, we said in unison. She spent the next 6 hours writing. Mika and I took turns watching the security monitors, jumping at every shadow. As dawn broke, Rebecca hit publish. The story went live on 3 different platforms simultaneously. Now what? I asked. Now we wait, and hope it spreads faster than they can contain it. The first shares came within minutes, then dozens, hundreds. Other journalists picking it up, asking for interviews. Rebecca's phone rang constantly. By noon, it was trending on social media. Warehouse girls. Stories from other survivors started emerging, but with exposure came danger. Rebecca's security cameras showed men circling the building. Multiple cars parked on the street. They were closing in. We need to get you somewhere safe, Rebecca said. Both of you. She made calls, arranged safe houses, but before we could leave, Mika grabbed my arm. Look, on the laptop screen, a news alert. Multi-state trafficking ring exposed. FBI launches investigation. It was working. The story was too big to bury now, but that also meant the people behind it were desperate. Cornered animals are the most dangerous. Back door, Rebecca said urgently. Cars waiting. We grabbed our few belongings and ran. Made it halfway down the alley before shots rang out. Brick exploded next to my head. We dove behind a dumpster as more bullets sparked off metal. Run! Mika shoved me toward the street. Get to the car! I ran. Heard her right behind me. The black SUV was there. Door open. Driver yelling for us to hurry. I dove in. Turned to pull Mika after me. She wasn't there. I looked back to see her on the ground, red spreading across her shirt, just like before. But this time, I didn't run. I jumped out, grabbed her under the arms, dragged her to the car as bullets whined past. Drive! I screamed as we tumbled inside. The driver floored it. Mika was conscious but pale, pressing her hand to her side. Just a graze, she gasped. I'm okay. The safe house was 2 hours away, a farmhouse surrounded by empty fields. Perfect sight lines in every direction. The driver, an ex-cop named Marcus, had medical training. He cleaned and bandaged Mika's wound while I paced, watching the long driveway. You did good, he said. Stories everywhere now. FBI's already making arrests. But I couldn't relax. Not until I knew it was really over. We spent 3 days in that farmhouse, watching the news obsessively. More arrests. More girls coming forward. The warehouse in Texas raided. Evidence recovered. Mr. Lee in handcuffs on national television. Rebecca visited on the 4th day with updates. 26 arrests so far. 3 more warehouses found. Over 100 girls freed. Is it over? I asked. The main operation is done, but there might be stragglers. People who want revenge. You'll need to be careful for a while. A while turned out to be months. Mika and I stayed in protective custody, gave statements to the FBI, testified to a grand jury. It was exhausting, reliving it all again and again. But every time I wanted to quit, I thought of Stephanie on the streets, Lily in the ground, all the girls still trapped. The trial started 6 months later. I testified behind a screen, voice distorted, but I testified, told everything. The defense attorneys tried to discredit me, paint me as confused, traumatized, unreliable, but there were too many of us, too much evidence, too many consistent stories. Mr. Lee got life without parole. Others got decades. Some clients pleaded out, gave up bigger names. The network unraveled piece by piece. You did it, Mika said the day the last verdict came in. We did it. But victory felt hollow. Those men took years from us. Innocence, trust, the ability to feel safe. No amount of justice could give that back. Still, something had shifted. The nightmares came less frequently. I could walk down the street without constantly checking behind me. Started therapy with someone who specialized in trafficking survivors. Baby steps toward healing. Mika and I got an apartment together. 2 bedrooms, good locks, but not excessive. She went back to school, studying social work. Wanted to help other girls like us. I kept working at the restaurant, but started taking night classes, business management. Maybe I'd run my own place someday. 1 year after the story broke, Rebecca invited us to a survivor gathering. Women from all over, different operations, different years, but the same story. We sat in a circle, sharing experiences, crying, laughing, healing together. I saw Stephanie there, clean for 6 months, living in a halfway house, working on her GED. She hugged me tight, whispered thank you for speaking up, for being brave when she couldn't. That night, I finally cried for all of it. For the girl I was at 14, desperate to save her dying mother. For the innocents stolen. For Mika bleeding in the dirt. For all the girls who didn't make it out. But also for the strength we found, the bonds we built, the justice we fought for and won. It wasn't a perfect victory. Nothing could undo what happened, but we'd survived. We'd spoken. We'd made sure it couldn't happen to others. The healing would take a lifetime. Some days were harder than others. Triggers everywhere. Trust issues that might never fully resolve. But I was no longer just surviving. I was living, building a future, reclaiming pieces of myself I thought were lost forever. And sometimes, on good days, I could almost remember what hope felt like. The healing process wasn't linear. 2 years passed, and while the nightmares decreased, they never fully disappeared. I'd wake up at 3 a.m., sheets drenched, checking the locks on our apartment door. Mika understood. She had her own demons. We developed routines that helped. Morning runs before dawn when the streets were empty. Cooking together in our tiny kitchen. Finding comfort in chopping vegetables and stirring pots. Small things that made us feel human again. I'd been promoted to head prep cook at the restaurant. Mr. Chen trusted me with ordering supplies, managing inventory. The work still exhausted me, but it felt good to be relied on for something positive. My night classes in business management were going well. Numbers made sense in a way people often didn't. Then one Thursday evening, everything shifted again. I was closing up the restaurant kitchen when Mr. Chen approached me, looking troubled. He held an envelope in his weathered hands. "Someone leave this for you," he said in broken English. "Man in suit. Say very important you get it." My blood turned to ice. I took the envelope with trembling fingers, recognizing the weight of expensive paper. No return address, just my name written in neat script. I waited until I got home to open it. Mika was at her evening class, studying for her social work certification. The apartment felt too quiet as I sat at our kitchen table, staring at the sealed envelope. Inside was a single photograph and a note. The photo showed me leaving the restaurant 2 nights ago. Taken from across the street, zoomed in enough to see my face clearly. The note was brief. "We know where you are. Stop talking or your friend joins the others." I called Mika immediately. She answered on the second ring. "Come home now," I said. "Don't take your normal route." She heard the panic in my voice. "What happened? Just come home, please." 20 minutes later, she burst through the door. I showed her the photo and note. Her face went pale. "How did they find us?" she whispered. "Does it matter? They know." We sat in silence, processing. The trials were over. The main players were in prison, but clearly some were still free, still hunting. "We need to call Marcus," Mika said, "the protection officer. He gave us his number for emergencies." I nodded, already reaching for my phone. Marcus answered immediately, like he'd been expecting our call. "Pack light," he said after I explained. "I'll be there in an hour. Don't answer the door for anyone else." We threw clothes and essentials into backpacks. I grabbed the emergency cash I still kept hidden, old habits dying hard. Mika packed her laptop and study materials, determined not to let them derail her education again. Marcus arrived exactly when promised, driving an unremarkable sedan. We slipped out the back entrance, leaving our apartment and the life we'd built behind. "Where are we going?" I asked as we merged onto the highway. "Safe house outside the city. We've had chatter about remaining network members trying to intimidate witnesses. You're the 3rd call this week." My stomach dropped. "The other girls? Safe, like you will be." The safe house was a modest ranch home in a quiet suburb. From the outside, it looked completely normal. Inside, reinforced doors and windows, security cameras, panic buttons in every room. 2 other women were already there. I recognized one from the trials, Maria, who'd escaped from a different warehouse. She nodded at us, understanding passing between us without words. Days blurred together. We couldn't leave the house, couldn't contact anyone outside. Marcus and other protection officers rotated shifts, bringing groceries and updates. The investigation had reopened. They were tracking the source of the threats. Mika continued studying, spreading textbooks across the living room floor. I cooked for everyone, finding peace in feeding people who understood my story without explanation. Maria taught us card games to pass the time. 2 weeks in, Marcus gathered us in the living room. "We've made arrests," he said. 3 men connected to the original network. They were trying to rebuild, intimidate witnesses to prevent future testimony. "Is it over?" Maria asked. "We believe so, but we're recommending relocation for all of you. New identities if you want them." I looked at Mika. We'd talked about this possibility, starting completely fresh somewhere nobody knew our history. But running felt like letting them win. "No," I said. "No more running." Mika nodded. "We stay. We finish what we started." Marcus frowned. "The risk? There's always risk," I interrupted. "At least here we have support systems. Rebecca, the survivor network, our lives we're building. We won't let them take that too." It took another week of negotiations, safety assessments, and paperwork. But eventually, we returned to our apartment. New locks installed, panic buttons discreetly placed, regular check-ins scheduled. The restaurant had held my job. Mr. Chen hugged me when I returned, tears in his eyes. He'd been worried. The familiar rhythm of prep work, the heat of the kitchen, the clatter of dishes, it all felt like coming home. Mika resumed her classes. She was 3 semesters from graduating, determined to become a social worker specializing in trafficking survivors. Her professors worked with her to make up missed assignments. We attended survivor meetings together now. The network had grown, women finding strength in shared experience. Some days were harder than others. Anniversaries of escape dates, news of another ring being discovered, the weight of survival when others hadn't made it. 6 months after the threat, I was working late at the restaurant when my phone buzzed. Rebecca Chen. "I wanted you to hear from me first," she said. "We're doing a follow-up story. 1 year later, where are they now? Would you participate?" I hesitated. More exposure meant more risk, but silence meant they won. "Yes," I said, "but no real names, no locations." "Of course, we'll protect you like before." The interview was conducted over encrypted video call. Rebecca asked about recovery, about building a life after trauma. I talked about small victories, learning to sleep through the night, maintaining friendships, planning for a future. "What would you tell other survivors?" she asked. I thought carefully. That healing isn't linear, that it's okay to have bad days, that survival is an act of rebellion. They tried to break us, but we're still here. The article published a week later. Messages poured in from other survivors, thanking us for speaking out, for showing that life after trafficking was possible, even if it wasn't easy. One message stood out. A young woman named Amy recently escaped from a similar situation. She was struggling, felt alone, didn't know how to move forward. I showed it to Mika. "We should meet her." "You sure? Someone has to be her lifeline, like you were mine." We met Amy at a coffee shop, Marcus discreetly watching from another table. She was 19, thin, haunted eyes that reminded me of my own reflection years ago. She clutched her coffee cup like an anchor. "I read your story," she said quietly. "Both versions. It gave me hope." We talked for 2 hours, about practical things, finding safe housing, accessing medical care, dealing with nightmares, about harder things, learning to trust, processing trauma, building identity beyond survival. "Does it get easier?" she asked. Different, I said honestly. The pain changes shape but doesn't disappear. You learn to carry it. We exchanged numbers, promised to check in. Walking home, Mika squeezed my hand. You did good, she said. We both did. That night, I dreamed about the warehouse for the first time in months. But this time, I wasn't alone. All the girls who'd escaped stood together, supporting each other. Even in dreams, we were stronger together. The next morning brought new challenges. A job interview at a small catering company. My first attempt at moving beyond the restaurant. The owner, Mrs. Rodriguez, had read about our story. She believed in second chances. I need someone reliable, she said. Someone who understands hard work. Can you handle it? Yes, I said, meaning it. I got the job. Better pay, regular hours, a chance to build something new. Mr. Chen was sad to see me go, but proud of my growth. He promised my job would always be there if I needed it. Mika graduated that spring. I sat in the audience, tears streaming down my face as she walked across the stage. She'd done it. Despite everything, she'd finished her degree. Her first job was at a nonprofit supporting trafficking survivors. She came home that first day exhausted but glowing. I helped someone today, she said. Really helped. Walked them through getting a restraining order against their trafficker's family. Made sure they had somewhere safe to sleep tonight. We celebrated with takeout from our favorite place, sitting on our apartment floor like we had in the early days. But now the silence between us was comfortable, not heavy with unspoken trauma. A year later, Rebecca called again. Another follow-up, another chance to show survival was possible. This time, I agreed to speak at a conference. Still protected identity, still careful, but louder than before. The room was full of social workers, law enforcement, medical professionals, people who might encounter trafficking survivors. I stood at the podium, hands shaking slightly, and began. I was 14 when someone offered me a job that seemed too good to be true. I told our story. Not all the details, some wounds were still too fresh, but enough to make them understand. The signs they missed, the systems that failed us, the resilience it took to survive. Afterwards, a young police officer approached me. My partner and I arrested a girl last week for prostitution. Teenager, no ID, wouldn't talk. After hearing you, I think we got it wrong. Find her, I said urgently. Check for tattoos, brands, ask if she's safe. Don't assume she's there by choice. He promised to follow up. Later, I learned they'd connected her with services, helped extract her from a trafficking situation. One girl saved because someone finally listened. The work continued. Mika counseled survivors. I started speaking at more events, training people to recognize signs. We moved to a bigger apartment, one with proper bedrooms and a kitchen that didn't feel like a closet. Some days were still hard. Triggers came unexpectedly. A cologne that smelled familiar, a car that followed too closely, nightmares that left us both awake at 3 a.m. But we had tools now. Therapy techniques, grounding exercises, each other. 5 years after escape, I opened my own catering business. Small, just me and 2 employees to start, but mine. Built with my own hands, my own choices. We catered survivor events for free, our way of giving back. Mika became a supervisor at her nonprofit, training new counselors. She was brilliant at it, combining lived experience with professional knowledge. Her survivors trusted her because she'd been there. We never forgot the ones we lost. Lily, overdosed in an alley. Stephanie, who we'd found but couldn't save from her demons. The countless girls whose names we never knew. Their memories drove us forward. The threats had stopped, but vigilance remained. We still checked locks, still varied routines, still startled at unexpected knocks. Some wounds don't heal. They just scar over, leaving permanent marks. But we built lives anyway. Real lives, with purpose and connection and even joy. We proved that survival was possible, that broken people could rebuild.